Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and my law firm assists nurse practitioners with employment contract and independent contractor agreement issues. So today I'm going to talk about kind of the basics of when and how a nurse practitioner should approach being an independent contractor. So in any employment relationship, a nurse practitioner is going to be either an employee or an independent contractor. So as an employee, you get a W-2 at the end of the year. Taxes are taken out via regular payroll. You'll also get benefits, expenses paid for, time off, that type of thing. As an independent contractor, you'll receive a 1099 at the end of the year, and no taxes will be taken out of your compensation at all throughout the relationship with whoever you're working for. Additionally, as an independent contractor, you're not going to get any of those benefits that I mentioned before. You're not going to get paid time off. They're not going to pay for your license or DEA registration or malpractice insurance, life, vision, dental, disability, retirement. You won't get any of that as an independent contractor. So when and where does it make sense to be an independent contractor? Well, if you're an NP working sporadically for an employer, or you're just filling in occasionally, maybe a couple times a month, in that situation, it's unlikely that whoever you're working for is going to want to consider you an employee because they have to pay employment tax, and then potentially may have to offer you benefits as well, which they probably won't want to do. But it also affords, when I say it, I mean when you are an independent contractor as a nurse practitioner, there are also some benefits as well, and a few of those would be the tax deductions that you can receive. So if you're going to work as an independent contractor as an NP, you will, or at least it would make sense, to create an LLC. Then you need to get a federal tax ID number, an EIN, and then you should get a bank account for that specific LLC. And then you can not only run the compensation through that bank account, but then you can run all of the expenses associated with your practice as a nurse practitioner. So if you had to get a separate malpractice policy or equipment, travel costs, any kind of licenses that you may not need if you're working as an employee somewhere else, all of those things can be deducted. You can also get creative with it. What I would suggest doing is hooking up with an accountant in your area that's familiar with independent contractor setups, and then talk with them about the things that you can do to maximize your deductions at the end of a year. Some problems with classifying an NP as an employer independent contractor: I find that some employers will want to misclassify a nurse practitioner as an independent contractor simply to get out of having to pay employment tax, which is somewhere between like 12 to 15% of whatever the gross revenue, or at least gross pay to the nurse practitioner is. Some of the problems with being misclassified is if the IRS came in at a later date and determined that the employee / independent contractor was being misclassified, back taxes may be owed if they were identified as a nurse, the nurse practitioner as an independent contractor. I've found a few independent contractor agreements that state if in that scenario the IRS comes in and audits and determines that the NP was misclassified, that they would then be responsible for paying those back taxes, any attorney's fees, that type of thing. Obviously, you absolutely do not want to sign any kind of language like that. It's generally not your decision in the first place. If the employer is going to ask you to identify as a independent contractor, and you certainly don't want to be responsible for their screw up or paying any of the back taxes, employment taxes, any of that kind of stuff. So be very careful when you're signing an independent contractor agreement that it doesn't have language like that. There may be like an indemnification clause or something in there about you having to pay their attorney's fees or any penalties. So be very careful about signing anything like that. generally, if you're working for a hospital network, a hospital system, if you're working in collaboration with a small physician group, you're almost always going to be identified as an employee. As I said before, it only makes sense when you're kind of filling in on a part-time basis, or if you're truly in control of your schedule, meaning it's completely up to you when and where you work and how much. In that scenario, even though you may be working a lot, if it's honestly completely in your control, although as an MP it's very difficult to do that, especially if you're in like an FNP or something like that, where you're regularly servicing a patient base. There has to be some schedule in advance, and an advanced schedule kind of leans more towards the MP being an employee. So there are a number of things to think about if you're deciding to be an independent contractor as a nurse practitioner, but there are some benefits, as I said before, with some tax deductions that go along with it. If you have any questions or concerns about an employment agreement or independent contractor agreement, feel free to contact my law firm at the phone number listed below in the description. You can reach us through our website, chellelaw.com. Please subscribe to the channel. We release videos every single day. All right, appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.